raise some
Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.
Welcome to the Raising Cain show, where the truth is sacred, courage is required, and virtue still matters. Today, we're going to be talking with a very interesting guest, and we're going to be continuing on the uncovering, if you will, of what happened with JFK. We've had a number of really good guests on the show, and it has been phenomenal. And tonight's guest is no different, another phenomenal guest. And we're going to be talking about new information that is confirmed with what has come out in the documents that were declassified by the FBI. But it's going to be an interesting show, and we'll be talking about his book tonight, and that's James Manning, or Jim Manning as he goes by. But as you guys know, I always run my commercials first to get that out of the way so that way we don't have any interruptions. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and we'll be right back after a short break.
It says, I woke up this morning and looked out the door to a country I don't recognize. They put masks on our face to hide our pain, and there's no fire in most people's eyes. And it's still true today. It's still true today that they've tried to destroy the American spirit. And in some instances, they've done a dadgum good job. But in other instances, they have lit an inferno in some people. And we right now are gathering some of those people that are on freaking fire to save this country.
Increasing expenses have caused us all a lot of pressure these days, and it's affecting even the wealthiest of people. Most have lost their sense of security, stability, and even hope for a strong financial future. The game plan of everyone in your cell phone has likely been disrupted or even hardcore stopped, and most are looking for a creative solution to regain financial momentum. Oftentimes, life's best solutions are the simplest. But first, a question. What is something most people think they should own but don't? Crypto, fine art, real estate? Nope. We are talking about real money. The kind kings and queens fought for and large institutions today buy in mass. We're talking about gold and silver, assets that provide confidence in tough financial situations. So the question is, do you own any? If you don't, you're not alone. Most people aren't maximizing the power of precious metals because it's just been too complicated. And even though they see advertisements about gold and silver daily, they don't really know who to trust. That is, until now. The bottom line is that buying gold and silver doesn't have to be complicated or scary. There's a simple, better way to accumulate assets and create financial peace, headache-free. And this very minute, a new community of average people are seeing above average results to the tune of tens of millions in assets over the last few years. This system is tested, it's simple, and it's not an experiment. To date, it's helped more than 80,000 people bring hope back into their lives. It's invitation only. And right now, this new community has accepted a challenge to give away as much free gold this year as possible. Curious? Learn how to get your free gold today. Check out the next step to get the details.
Since 2017, 150,000 farms have shut down, and working farmland has been reduced by 21 million acres. The system has been crippling the remaining farmers, forcing some to adopt nefarious farming techniques, like pumping hormones and other performance-enhancing drugs into their cows so they can survive in crammed feedlots. Or the farmers are forced to jump ship and sell to land-hoarding, profit-chasing agricultural oligarchies, who use their billions of dollars to crush the competition and increase your family's dependence on their manufactured food. What could possibly go wrong? The family farm will soon be a thing of the past, unless you do something. You can. That's why there's From the Farm, an industry-disrupting platform that connects consumers directly with local farmers, which means you can buy fresh, non-factory farm food, and you'll know exactly where your food came from and how it was raised. For the first time in nearly 100 years, independent farms will have a way to not only survive, but thrive. From the Farm was founded by A.J. Richards, an active homesteader, and Brooke Entz, a CrossFit Games athlete and an Amazonian warrior in the movies Wonder Woman and Justice League. She clearly has a passion for healthy food and a healthy lifestyle. And since both AJ and Brooke come from generations of ranchers and farmers, they know what they're talking about. We can't do this alone. We need the strength of the American people behind us. Help us build a new food system that combines the wisdom of the past with the technology of the future. Investing in From the Farm isn't just a financial decision. It's an investment into our future, our small family farms, and our food sovereignty. Invest today.
Welcome back to the Raising Cain Show. Folks, thanks for sticking with us through those commercial breaks. And today's guest is Jim Manning, a principled thinker and author of the powerful new book, Patriotism, Unhinged, 1963 to 2024. In it, he argues that patriotism, a virtue once rooted in selflessness, civic duty, and moral clarity, has been slowly distorted by those who want to divide us or manipulate what it means to love your country. We're going to talk about how illusionary warfare has clouded truth, how patriotism became controversial, and what it takes to reclaim it in a nation that's lost its way. This conversation is about defending virtue in an age of deception and why your love for your country still matters more than ever. Jim, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for the invitation.
So, Jim, let's get started with your book. You refer to patriotism as a virtue. What do you believe defines true patriotism?
Patriotism, to me, is searching for what you believe is the truth, and then moving on it, talking about it, and not accepting the propaganda that's put out continually, which leads us down the wrong path.
Now, that propaganda that you're referencing, you go through and kind of show where the origin of that is and how it made it into our country, particularly within our intelligence community. That brings up this idea of illusionary warfare in what, when I was giving the opening talking about that, I had not even heard of that term. And so maybe that's a good starting place. Tell us what illusionary warfare is, and then let's get into kind of where this all started and where the problem began in American history.
Yeah. Well, the term illusionary warfare was given to a CIA educational project, whereby people that they were going to put in dubious situations would have some understanding of how they might get in trouble and how they would get out of it. And people like Lee Harvey Oswald went through illusionary warfare school in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, and he was sent there from Japan, and then went on to the government language school in California and given a Russian accelerated course, and then went back home because his mother was ill, and they used that as a reason to get him out of the Marine Corps. Supposed to stay home and help his mother, and within a week he was on a plane to Finland, and from Finland into Russia. So just that alone would tell somebody the government's involved. It wasn't even on a commercial plane that he went. So he would face in Russia. He had to face the government, who knew that he had worked in the U2 program, and so there was information they'd like to glean from him. But however, he sent a lot of wrong signals to them, and so they didn't do what they've done with other people in that program, which was to try to turn them into double agents. And so at one point, they wanted to send him home, and he cut his wrist, probably with a butter knife, and to make a point. And then they let him stay, and he worked in a radio factory for quite a while. They did give him a nice apartment to be in. And when he had just had enough of it, he went to the embassy, said he wanted to go back home. They gave him tickets for him and his family and sent him home. When he got back, he wasn't educated enough to move into this Central Intelligence Agency as an agent, but he needed something to get started. And so they gave him a job in a photographic proprietary company that was owned by the CIA, and then in a coffee company in New Orleans, because they wanted him to do some work in New Orleans. And he got involved in New Orleans with a group that had the CIA had put together to try to come up with a serum of some type that would give somebody cancer very, very quickly. And that group consisted of Ferry and his new girlfriend, Judy Berry Baker, and Oswald and Dr. Mary Sherman. And they worked together to try to come up. Dr. Oxner was in charge of the group, and he was a well-established doctor in the cancer area, had a big building named after him down there. And they worked on it for some time, trying to come up with something to kill Castro with. And they actually came pretty close. What they did was they would take certain rodents of one type or another, mice, rats, rabbits, and they would secrete things from their livers. And the Dr. Mary Sherman already had a pretty good idea of different types of chemicals to use. And they put this all together, and with the idea of using it to kill Castro. Castro has outlived more idiotic attempts to kill him than any man in the United States. Cigars that blow up and so forth, you know. Anyway, so that group ended up with Dr. Mary Sherman being killed, and uh, uh, Lee Harvey Oswald being killed, and Mr. Ferry being killed. So it's possible that that was what they used on Jack Ruby, a quick cancer killing agent. The way it worked was if you got and I don't know whether it was a pill or something in a drink or whatever it was, but if you got it and you had symptoms of cancer, every time they took a X-ray of you, it would metastasize it very, very quickly, very, very quickly. And so with just a few of those X-rays, you probably would die in about a month.
Wow.
But if you were in the hospital and they were taking X-rays daily or every other day, you'd probably die in 2 weeks.
Yeah, man. This is something that is eerily familiar as we see, with the COVID vaccines, the mRNA vaccines, and there's a lot of evidence that they cause turbo cancer. They certainly shut down your immune system, and it seems like we've been doing research into that for a very long time.
Yes.
Now, I want to go back to something you said about Lee Harvey Oswald in where he went and the places that he ended up.
Yeah.
You mentioned Japan. And what I find interesting about that is if you go look at the FBI declassified documents on JFK, the very last document, now I don't know if they've released anything since then, but the very last document that they had gone through and unredacted everything that was heavily redacted was a document that showed the FBI, and I can't remember the name of the agent, but there was an FBI agent who he flew to Japan, to Tokyo Station, CIA station, and met with them and confirmed that he was an asset, that Lee Harvey Oswald was an asset of the CIA. That is in there, and that was, of course, redacted, heavily classified for a very long time. And what you're describing, him going from there to the language school and then being sent to Russia to infiltrate, this sounds like very standard practice for how they bring in assets and how they utilize them. And it would appear to me, based on everything that I've read so far, that they had him infiltrate or try to infiltrate the Russians to look like a good communist. And so he became a perfect patsy to pin the murder of JFK on so that they could justify war with the communists. Now, in your book is one of the only 2 books that actually has the extemporaneous notes from Deputy Director of the CIA at the time, who kept meticulous records of all the phone conversations, all the meetings, that lays out the entire plan and plot for the assassination of JFK, that shows that the FBI director was involved, J. Edgar Hoover. It shows that the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the DOD was involved. It shows a number of people involved, including, and this one surprised me, but Gerald Ford. He was directly involved in misleading the Warren Commission afterwards in handling the people, which is interesting because here again, you have him being, made basically being made the president. He's a CIA, basically a CIA guy, and he gets made the president after Nixon is removed. And then the next president after that, you have, of course, Ronald Reagan. And interestingly enough, they removed his first choice of vice president and replaced it with a former CIA director, George Bush Sr. And of course, and then there was an attempted assassination on Reagan. So it seems that whatever this is, this plot, this deep state, they have been involved in being kingmakers around the world, but also here in this country too, and assassinating those people who stand in their way and replacing them, with people that they know will do their bidding. Tell me about and tell our
Exactly.
listeners tell our listeners about how you came into all of this, because that's an interesting story in and of itself.
Well, back at the start of it, I was a young Marine, 1961, on Halloween was my first day in the Marine Corps. Went through boot camp, went through advanced training, and was sent to the infantry, 1st Battalion, 2nd Marines at Camp Lejeune. And the day I reported in, they were leaving. I never got to go into the building. They brought me out a Foot Locker, and I was already had everything in a seat bag because I was reporting in. And we got on a truck. It took me to Morehead City, North Carolina, and I got on a ship. They told me we were going on a med cruise, and we did go on a med cruise by way of the Caribbean, because when we left Morehead City, we headed directly for the Caribbean, and we didn't know, because in those days there wasn't any TV on the ships and very little radio that you could pick up. Mostly it was music from the Caribbean, but that was right in the middle of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and so we were probably being used as they set up a blockade, and we were probably one of the ships that was being used for that for a while, because it took us 17 days to make a crossing, which is about 3 times what it would have to be. But at any rate, then I moved. After that, I was sent to Headquarters Marine Corps in Washington, D.C., and I was a security guard in the file section. And while I was there, I came upon information that suggested, and in some ways was pretty confident that, that Lee Harvey Oswald could never have made those shots. And he couldn't have made those shots because I had found documents that said he was unqualified. He had been in the Marine Corps twice. He joined when he was too young. They found out he was too young and they put him out. And then when he was old enough, he went back in again. He really wanted to be a Marine. And he, in the Marine Corps, if you don't qualify with a rifle, you will not be in the infantry at that time. And so what would happen is you would go to supply, you'd go to the motor pool, might even be a cook, or a lot of them went to the air wing. And so he shipped out to Atsugi, Japan, to the air wing. So I live in Norfolk, Virginia, and about 5 miles from where I lived the most accomplished sniper in the history of the American service. His name was Carlos Hathcock, and Carlos Hathcock, I wasn't a friend of his, but I was an acquaintance, and I met with him several times later and talked about Oswald's ability, and he said that was a bedtime story, that he couldn't have made those 3 shots, and he knew that nobody could make those 3 shots. He said that the best shot would have been coming down Houston Street, it would be one shot. You'd hit him right in the head, and that would be the end of it. And that would have came from that window in the school book depository. So anyway, that's how when I realized that he could never have done it, I really when he said I'm a patsy, that's what he was. He was a patsy. And I spent a lot of time trying to prove it. And in doing that, I came upon evidence later on that had been put out about 2002 in a book called Regicide. And I studied that. I went real deep on that for a couple of years, contacting, in the Regicide book, there were hundreds and hundreds of CIA people, their addresses and their names, for some reason, all in that book. I was able to contact some of the sons and daughters of those people, and they would refer me to other people who had stories, and I was fairly certain that was, people always say somebody would have talked. Well, somebody did talk.
Mm-hmm.
One of the top guys in the CIA talked because he was afraid that his family would have to, his children and their children would have the name Crowley, and it'll come out eventually. It always does. And so he secreted away all of the information because he was the one who was keeping all the notes and everything. Mm-hmm. And he took them out of Langley, he hid them away, and he went through two guys before he found the third that he trusted to write the book after his death. And that was Gregory Douglas. Now, he knew Gregory Douglas wouldn't not write it because he was hated by the CIA, Gregory Douglas, and he hated them. So he wrote the book, and the book came out, and somebody at Langley was asleep at the switch, and before they knew it, 10,000 books were printed and were out, and they were running around picking them up and threatening the writer and threatening the publishing company if they didn't get the copyrights, so it could never be made again. And the CIA has total control of the media. It started back in the 50s with what they called the Mighty Wurlitzer. Mm-hmm. Now, the Mighty Wurlitzer was where they would make really good contacts. For example, the owner of Life magazine bought the film of the Zapruder film on the same day of the assassination. And he had Life and Time magazine. And I believe his name was Luce, his wife, Claire Booth Luce. And you couldn't see that film for 10 or 12 years. And so that was the way that, and in Washington, the Washington Post was owned by the Grahams, and they were actually not on the payroll, but they were involved very heavily with the CIA. And so, his name is escaping me right now, but one individual had control of the television stations and the people who had newspapers, and if they didn't do what the CIA wanted them to do, they stood the risk of not getting stories and things, one thing and another, being frozen out. And so it was pretty easy for them to massage the situation and get everything they wanted. One of them said that he could make up a lie, and within 24 hours, the lie would be all around the world, and everybody would believe it. And it's happened down through the years now. Who can fight? You know, I want to bring the truth out, and the Central Intelligence Agency has at least 20,000 people working for it. Now, I always say that the majority of those people are just great people, just like mailmen and milkmen, and they get up in the morning, they go in, they do their job, they go home. However, in the assassination, probably not more than 50 people were involved in it in the CIA, but there was involvement from the Secret Service, there was involvement from the National Security Agency. Every single one of the Joint Chiefs of Staff had to vote yes on the killing. And I was very surprised that the head of the Joint Chiefs was a good friend of Jack Kennedy. And I was really surprised that he voted yes. But anyway, it looks to me like the start of the deep state was in 1947, whenever the Dulles brothers convinced President Truman that executive action or the ability to kill people was going to become necessary. And he agreed with them that he would allow it. And after that, they reapproached him with plausible deniability. And he was vehemently against that. But Dulles went to Congress and told them that the president had agreed to it. And so they passed it, and it caught Truman asleep. And both Truman and Eisenhower, after the assassination, made statements that you have to beware of the military-industrial complex, because it's all about money. In Vietnam, there were 15,000 Bell helicopters made, and most of them, you know, were destroyed. They built a harbor there where there was already a harbor. They built another one, and millions and millions of dollars went into the companies like Root and you know, construction companies, weapons people, and so they got what they wanted. They had when Jack Kennedy got in, they already had a 2,000 person army that they had trained for about a year in Lake Pontchartrain, Louisiana, in the Everglades in Florida. So they had their own little army. They killed Patrice Lumumba. They killed Allende and I get confused on all those little places in the Caribbean, but they killed two brothers, the Diem brothers in Vietnam, just 2 or 3 weeks before they killed Kennedy. So, you know, it's nobody could stop them. And to be honest with you, they couldn't stop them today. I don't think they could, no. And a lot of people are wondering why I'm still walking around. I just feel like I didn't really want to write the book. I waited. I've been studying this for over 50 some years. And my life was threatened in 1968. And it took me a long time to find out who threatened me. But I found out that it was a guy named Antonio Sansone. And I later found out that he was the best friend of Frank Sturgis. They were both born and raised in somewhat in Norfolk. Sturgis went to Philadelphia when he was a little older, but they're born and raised here, and they worked here. And I had contacted the district attorney in New Orleans, and he had told me not to tell him what I was going to tell him because his lines were compromised. Jim Garrison, yeah. He said, call him back in 2 weeks because he said, there's a man in here right now, actually, who's working on it. And he says it'll take about another 10 days. So he says, call me back and tell me what you want to say. I'll be patiently waiting for it. And 3 days after that, in my local paper, the Virginian Pilot, there appeared an article with Mr. Garrison's picture, and under it, some copy that mentioned my name 2 or 3 times, that I had spoken with him and invited him to come and speak at Old Dominion College at the time. Now it's a university. And we kibitzed a little bit. And of course, I didn't tell him. He stopped me from telling him what I had seen as a young Marine in the files. And so it was 3 or 4 days after that that I was approached by his best friend, didn't know it, who told me, he said to me, if you know what's good for you, you'll leave that blank, blank Kennedy thing alone. And then he screamed at me, you understand me? And I got the idea. He was a pretty wide-shouldered guy. He looked like a military type. And all that I knew about him was that the manager of the store that he worked at told me that he was a government spook. And I said, government spook? He said, yes, he goes down south for the government. And years later, another researcher from Massachusetts had the name that I was looking for, and he found him in Schenectady, New York. I talked to his family up there. They sent me pictures of him, and one of the pictures was right on at the time he threatened me. So I've been doing this a long time, and I was waiting for somebody else who's a professional writer or a somebody like the meathead with on the show All in the Family. He says he knows. He said he knows who the shooters were and so on and so forth. But somebody that people would look at and listen to anyway. And every time that I tried to bring it up at conventions or there was somebody there who put the kibosh on it. And I finally realized that when you get a big group like that together on something as important as the Kennedy assassination, a small percentage of them are going to be CIA. And usually they get moved up to the top of the group. And
Jim, I don't know if you're familiar with my story, but I was an FBI whistleblower back in 2018 and blew the whistle on the FBI's cover-up of Hillary Clinton's crimes related to money laundering, public corruption, securities and exchange fraud, and terrorism financing. And, the big story that everybody talks about is the Uranium One story. And that is, without a doubt, is a big part of it, but it's not the entirety of it. And there were these money laundering documents showed massive amounts of money coming from places they shouldn't be coming from, getting filtered through all these foundations and eventually making their way, and everybody taking their cut. It is so massive, but the terrorism financing that was going on had to do with a guy in Egypt who was the head spokesman for the Muslim Brotherhood. And money was leaving the Clinton Foundation, going through shell bank accounts and ending up in this guy's account. All of this happening in the lead up to the Arab Spring. And of course, this is while Hillary Clinton is Secretary of State. And oftentimes, people in the intelligence community know that the Secretary of State or the State Department essentially is that's the daddy for the CIA. And oftentimes CIA, uses diplomatic immunity and that sort of thing to move people around to different places. So I've often thought that what I uncovered and what I brought out was of a nature that could get me killed And I was very worried about that, which is why I went to great lengths to, keep my anonymity for as long as I could. And then when the FBI raided me, they raided my home in, I think it was November of 2018. I had already blown the whistle, had gone through, it had taken a year to get through all of the process and to keep my identity hidden. I had a lawyer that was, I was working with, that was making those arrangements. But the thing that became apparent to me by looking at the money trail was that there were people involved, probably within the intelligence community, within CIA and State Department, that were all making massive amounts of money on the back end of this thing. And I really do feel like the corruption, it really, deep state is a good term because it really, it exemplifies what is really going on. It is a deep group of actors that are acting as a shadow government, but they're not just acting as, like, I think about the Dulles brothers, for example. They, I think, were motivated by wrongly, and I think it was I think they were motivated by a desire to wipe out communism and try to destroy the evil of communism. But I think what we learn is that even if somebody has good intentions, and even if somebody believes that what they're doing is right, when they have consolidated power, it almost always, most assuredly, leads to grave evil, because no one can stop them. And this has been one of my biggest contentions within the intelligence community, and I've been a part of the intelligence community myself. I worked for the FBI, I worked for NSA. I was with Marfor Cyber and detached to NSA. Read on to all of our surveillance systems, all of our spy satellite systems, all of that. And I remember after being read on thinking to myself, this is very dangerous stuff. If this is misused on the American people, it could be used as a source of collecting blackmail. It could be used as a source of putting pressure on politicians, and they could pretty much run this country without being elected.
That's exactly true.
But they assured me, oh, we would never use this system on American citizens. In fact, the way that they assured me was by making me sign documents that said if I ever used it illegally, if I ever used it to spy on an American citizen, that I would be looking at a 10-year prison sentence for each offense, for violating the rights and violating the constitutional rights of an American citizen. So I kind of took them at their word, but it became apparent right after I left the NSA and went over to FBI. It was right around that time that it was Obama's last year as president. And it was at that time he changed a whole lot of the rules for how information is shared, particularly allowing unmasked information to be shared, which had never before been allowed. The NSA basically kept tight rein on that, and so you had to go through a process to get something unmasked, and it involved judges and all of that. But they created this program, Section 702, which allowed them to start spying on people's digital data without a warrant. And and with the claim that, oh well, as long as we don't disclose that information, or if we uncover or unmask something that turns out to be an American, we got to delete the entry. But it's clear that they haven't been doing that. And I think it's interesting because we are right back where all of this stuff that happened with JFK, all of the stuff that happened with RFK, all the stuff that happened with MLK, right? All of these guys that were assassinated, and all the clandestine programs and black budget stuff that was going on. And you had this commission the Church Commission put together to basically put an end to it all. Yet we are right back where we started. And now, in some ways, it's worse than it was even back then. Because I would say that back then, and this is where I'm kind of rounding off this topic, but back then, I think that there were people who really believed that they were combating evil, the evil of communism. But I think communism has made its way into our government now. Jim Comey admitted to being a registered communist in college. And you also had, oh gosh, what's his name? The CIA director at the time, who he also, had communist tendencies. And so, I mean, these guys are very much, and of course, Barack Obama himself, I think, was a socialist, in disguise. So the thing is that we've allowed these systems to be created with good intentions, right? To be able to spy on our enemies, but they have been turned around and used against the American people and politicized and used against conservatives. In fact, there was a federal judge that said that there were 258,000 illegal uses of Section 702 to spy on American citizens after the January 6th. Most of the people were related to January 6th. These are American citizens that had their rights violated. And this was according to a federal judge. So my concern is, and I think this is what you get into in your book, and I haven't read your book, but I plan on it. But I really do think that we have to start identifying what is true patriotism, what is virtue, and we've got to get back to that, and we've got to look at things like ethics and use that as a model for deciding on what tools we're going to use. And just because we can do something doesn't mean we should. And so I do think that we need some significant reform. I think we probably need another church-style commission. And unfortunately, if history is gives us any lessons, we'll probably have to do this, again in the future. Like even if we had a church commission now and we cleaned things up and we routed all the enemy out of our out of our intelligence community, out of our government. Fact is that it'll get that way again because of the way that the classified world operates. Things are hidden. I mean, look how long it took for JFK files to get declassified.
Yeah.
Top secret information is supposed to be automatically declassified after 10 years. So, it is, we're just, I just feel like we're in a very dangerous place right now as a country. And even with Trump in office, who I support, I do have concerns about the intelligence community and the tools that are still in play. For whatever reason, Congress decided the Republican Congress decided to kick the can down the road and not put an end to Section 702, even though it has been abused over and over and over again, documented. And not a single person, as far as I'm aware of, from the FBI that misused that tool has gone to jail. And so if there's no accountability, then I don't expect anything to change. What are your thoughts on what I just talked about, and where do you see things going? How do we fix this problem in America and get back to being a constitutional republic?
I think that what has to happen is that people like you and people like me who can see what's going on, and they made up in the 50s. The CIA made up the term conspiracy theorists, and so for anything that went on, they just say it was conspiracy theorists, But what happens is if the people, and I'm only doing this 3 months, and we're approaching 2 million views. that means they're interested in finding out more. And when it gets big enough that whenever it comes time to vote, people are going to be very particular about what people say. They want to get people that they can trust because, it's controlled by the money. If if a president wants to keep somebody from being selected, he can tell the money people, don't give him anything. So then he's just left the grassroots money. He'll lose, she'll lose. And
I know
so,
that firsthand.
Yeah.
I said, I know that firsthand. I ran for Congress, and my opponent, he was able to raise $500,000. Actually, it was $800,000 2 weeks before the election that came through dark money.
Sure.
And, it's just, it was some cryptocurrency company that basically put advertising money out there. And because of Citizens United, basically they treat a corporation as if it's an American citizen with rights. And so they can advertise all they want. It's not regulated in any way, shape, or form by the FEC. And it's regulated by the IRS. And because the IRS, they don't expose anything. Everything's hidden. We don't even know where that money came from. It could have come from a foreign country. It could have come from foreign adversaries. And this is the problem in our politics today. You're right. In a place like West Virginia, where I live, I was running for half of the state, and 600,000, 700,000 people roughly that are eligible to vote and that vote. And in order to be able to reach those people, because of how mountainous our terrain is and because of how rural we are, the only way that you can win in this state is to do a direct mailer campaign, along with all of the other stuff that you're doing. But that's also one of the most expensive ways of advertising, because the cost for printing and mailing and all of that's quite expensive. So that is the difference between somebody who actually believes in the Constitution and cares about the people. And I'm not trying to disparage my congressman now who won. I think it's just part of the system. The system is broken.
That's right.
He has to work within whatever he's got to work within in order to win. I wasn't knowledgeable enough to know how to do that. And even if I had been, I don't know that I would have at the time. I think now if I were ever to run again, I would have to in order to win. There's just no way to win without it. I don't believe you can, because of the way the system is designed.
Right.
And it is a problem. So you end up having people getting in there. And so on this issue of money, when you have dark money that can enter into politics, how do we know that the CIA isn't funding their own guys who they want in there?
Exactly. What it needs is a limit. There needs to be a limit on how much you can advertise when you're running for office. Now, that would take people much brighter than me to say this is a fair amount. But that's the only way it's ever going to happen.
Yeah.
The Soroses of the world, or all the people,
I like the idea of saying, going back, like in West Virginia, we don't have to provide signatures to get on the ballot, but I do like the idea of signatures to get on the ballot. And I do think that at least with that, you could say, we're not going to allow for any money to be utilized for, political advertising or anything like that. It's going to be provided by a fund, that is, provided for through the taxpayers. And the allocation is based on, if you meet the requirements to get on the ballot, then that money gets split between all the people who met the requirements to get on the ballot. And that to me is the only way that seems fair.
That's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Because if we could control the big buck guys who are running everything, put them in their place, then people will start looking at who they're going to. Yeah, but even that, it's chancy, because when you look at people that come along, you think well, Clinton, this one, that one, Reagan. I mean, you love the people, and then they get in, and
you see their true colors. Yeah,
people are running them.
that's right.
Other people are running them. They're not running the country. Other people
Yeah.
are running the country.
I think it was Representative Burkett who did an interview with a podcast, and he said the way that it works down here in Washington D.C. on the floor, the way that he was talking about, they were talking about blackmail, and he goes, the way it works is like this: you go out of town with your colleagues on a congressional field trip, and you're sitting at the bar, and some beautiful woman walks up to you, and she's laughing at all your jokes, even though they're not that funny, and she's paying way more attention to you than she should. And next thing you know, you find yourself taking her back to your room and finding yourself in a compromising situation.
Right.
Come back home, you're on the floor of the Congress, and you're getting ready to vote on something, and somebody walks up to you with a cell phone and shows you a picture of that girl entering into your room and says, "You recognize this picture? Yeah, you might want to vote differently on that." And I suspect and this came from a sitting congressman, I suspect that he is probably relating a situation that one of his colleagues has experienced.
Mhm.
And that's why he's he felt that he should talk about it, because if we have guys that can't do their job, can't effectively govern or legislate on behalf of those that they represent, but are representing the interests of a shadow government, a deep state, corporate oligarchs, whatever.
Mhm.
And I don't think it's probably not a singular entity. It probably is multiple entities. Like I said, the corporate oligarchs, your intelligence community, deep state. You've got foreign interests that are manipulating people. All of this, they're all vying for power. And the people that get left out of that power are us, the American people.
That's right. Yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem. And to solve any problem, people have to think about it. They have to listen to other people talk about it, make a decision, and then follow through on it. That's the only way it's going to change. That's
You
why
talk, yeah,
when I wrote the book, it has 4 little sections. The first section was just how I got involved by what I saw. The second section was 20 people, 20 stories of people who knew about the assassination before it happened. The next was the picture of all the CIA documents on the assassination. And the last part was 20 people that were proven to be in Dealey Plaza on that day who were killers. They were hitmen. They were people that had killed before. The picture, and these are pictures. And so I did it that way because it's only 162 pages. But somebody who's in college and maybe they're going to want to write a paper on it, they don't have an opinion on it, that kind of indicates to anybody that it was a conspiracy. Nobody,
yep,
nobody could argue that point.
yeah. Now, I want to kind of shift our focus back to this concept of illusionary warfare. What, in your opinion, first of all, if you can explain what it is, and then how it targets core values like patriotism, and to what end?
Well, I think that the illusionary part of it is that things are always different than what they seem. And so the deep state can make everything look the way they want it to look, and there's no way to control that. You know, the amount of money that they have, the connections that they have, the people that work for them, the people that are threatened by them. I mean, you could go on and make a list of 20 different things. So they live on that. That's the engine of the deep state, is making things look different than they are.
And the funny thing about it is that concept has been around for a long time, and it was used in the military in particular. You know, I remember seeing some videos and documentaries where they talk about how they utilized like cutouts, you know, to make it look like there were more tanks in a place, right, than there were, or they also use camouflage nets and things like that, right? To that's kind of how it got its start, and then it evolved when they realized that the media was a very powerful thing. I think it started making its way into the media, foreign media at first, but at some point in time, they started infiltrating U.S. media and turning this tool of warfare essentially against the American people. And we see it to this day. It still happens. One of the things that was pretty disturbing to me was under the Obama administration. You had an act called the Smith-Mundt Act, which basically forbade the use of taxpayers' dollars being used to propagandize the American people. Propaganda was forbidden against the American people. But during the Obama administration, they created what they called the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, which basically allowed them to start utilizing propaganda again on the American people. Now, we saw a good example of this, you know, a modern day example of this with the Twitter files. I don't know if you got into reading much about those, but basically you had the FBI paying $9 million for access, backdoor access into Twitter when it was before Elon Musk took it over. And they were doing things like telling them which news stories to shut down and to call fake news. So, for example, when the Hunter Biden laptop story came out, they utilized a technique that actually is identified in what I think is probably like a digital version of the military's illusionary warfare, but they utilized a technique called pre-bunking. I saw this live during the 2016 election, the 2020 election, when the FBI and CISA, which is the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, were putting out joint press conferences up to 6 months in advance, saying that they were picking up intelligence that the Russians were going to, were going to try and sow seeds of doubts in our election and say that the machines, were faulty, or that, the election was stolen. That's called pre-bunking. They basically were doing this in order to be able to cheat and actually steal the election, and then hide behind, oh, well, see, we told you they were going to say that. And we saw this with all the social media, because if you tried to say anything about the elections and about election integrity, if you tried to say anything about COVID and about the origin of COVID and not being from a wet market but actually being from a lab, if you tried to say anything about the vaccines and dangers and or about that ivermectin was effective, or if you tried to talk about January 6th, those three topics got you banned, got your account completely banned. Not just on Twitter, but we saw it with YouTube, we saw it with Facebook. It was everywhere across the board. And that was the moment when I realized just how much the media, including social media, was controlled by the deep state. They had total control. And there were many people who were completely silenced and had their accounts completely shut down for telling the truth. I was one of those that got my account, permanently banned on Twitter. And the funny thing about it was, the last comment I made was Chris Krebs, the former director of CISA, had come out and made this public statement that the 2020 elections were the most secure election in American history. And I basically called him out on his bullshit. and literally within, I think, a couple hours later, my account was permanently banned. I couldn't even, they wouldn't even give me a reason for banning it. And when I tried to appeal, and I'd never had any warnings or anything before, but when I tried to appeal, they wouldn't even allow me to appeal. So it was very shocking to me to see just how much the government controlled.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then that came out in the Twitter files. It finally got exposed.
Yeah, it's a shame that somebody like you is trying to do something to let the people know what's going on. And at every turn, if they can smack you, they do.
Why do you think, there are so many modern challenges today in our country, specifically surrounding patriotism? I mean, you're right. There was a time, and I would say even as early back as 9/11, I think the country came together, and for a brief moment, people had patriotism again.
Right.
But it seems that something shifted in the Obama administration. Something shifted, and I think cultural Marxism. I think it's probably a combination of things. Probably a combination of 50 years of cultural Marxism, infiltrating our universities and influencing the next generation. That generation finally graduates and gets out there and becomes a part of the adult population. It's probably that's part of it. I would also imagine it was partially, due to the advent of social media and the ability for people to say a lot of hurtful and wicked things that they would never say to somebody's face. But it created a medium by which people could just be rude and obnoxious and evil, and say things without consequence. It created, I think, polarization in our country in a way that we've never seen before. And then, of course, the media being controlled by the deep state, the fake news media, as Trump likes to call it, and I think that's an appropriate name for it. They're pushing their agenda. There's a really great meme that somebody put out. I just saw it today, where they took all of these clips of the media, the mainstream media, saying that Trump colluded with Russia, and that all of these, people that are, top intelligence community figures that they said that Trump colluded with Russia, so it must be true, and it's like, it's like hundreds of them. And for somebody who gets their news, the majority of their news from the mainstream media, which I would say is probably most Americans, at least back then. I think that's changing now. It's no wonder that people had Trump derangement syndrome. It's no wonder that people believed that Trump was a Russian spy, that he was working for the enemy. And then now we have the proof in the release of these documents by Tulsi Gabbard, our director of national intelligence, proving that it was a plot by the deep state, that they actually had meetings, and that there's notes that they planned this, that they planned on setting Trump up, and essentially, as she calls it, had that it was seditious treason. And she's made criminal referrals. Now we'll see what happens. But as far as I'm concerned, unless I see somebody go to prison, I'm not going to believe anything's changed.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm kind of jaded because of what I went through, you know, as a whistleblower, somebody who brought information forward the right way and was punished for it. And the people who actually committed the crimes are all still out walking free and, you know, doing quite well.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
how do you think, or why do you think that love of country has become so controversial in today's cultural climate?
Well, I remember a lot of times when I would ask somebody just as a joke, when my children were growing up, their friends, I would say, you know who the vice president is, don't you? You know, and they'd look at you kind of, they didn't know. They didn't know, you know. And I don't think there's enough education in the schools now on what this country is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't. And that should change. That should change. I have a daughter who's a lawyer, and I used to make her mad because I said, how many of the Supreme Court judges can you tell me? And she would just get mad at me and walk away. You know, she knew them, but it was something I did just to aggravate her, I guess. But it's true. You know, what was the guy that had the talk show after? I'm trying to think before Jimmy Fallon.
Jay Leno or
Jay Leno. You know, I used to love it when he'd be taking a walk out there, and
oh yeah,
you know, he'd have the
Yeah,
microphone. He'd say somebody about. He'd say like, you know who the president is? Yeah, I think it's somebody named Reagan. You know,
Yep.
it's you know, somebody 20 years old. I mean, you wonder what the hell's
Yeah.
going on. You know.
Yeah. Well, and some of these people are you're right. They're in positions that they should know these things,
Sure.
and it's a very scary thing when you think about just how badly our education system has failed us.
Yeah.
I look at the word patriotism or the word patriot, and of course the origin of the word, right, comes from, you know, the Greek root of pater, or father, and so it's like fatherland. And love of country is probably the greatest definition, if you will, of what patriotism is supposed to be. And it's not a blind, you know, love of country. It's not love of, you know, I see this all the time. I love my country, and what I love about Trump is his recognition of America first, his recognition of we got to put our own country first and our own people first, and we need to make our country great again. That slogan, what a great slogan! But it's like the left, you know, they see it as like dirty words, and the truth is they should be wanting the same thing. They should want to make America great again. They should want to put America first. And you know, at some point in time, the Democrats at least cared about the working man, and you know, and they at least you know, fought for certain things. They seem to not care about that at all. They want open borders, want illegals coming across, want people getting out on cashless bail in places like California and New York. And it's like we really have lost something that used to bind us all together, which was this idea that we're Americans. You know, there wasn't this, you know, you're black, you're white, you're Hispanic. You know, everybody first and foremost was American, but we've lost that. And I think in some recent polling and stuff, they've shown that it's not just here. It's in other parts of the world too. It's in Europe. In fact, I'd say it's probably worse there than it is here. But most young people, they don't love their country. In fact, they hate their country, and the reason is because they have a misunderstood view of their country. They have I believe they've had propaganda, probably from our foreign adversaries, pushed on them in our universities, teaching them that this country is a terrible country, and that, you know, communism and socialism is such a wonderful, great thing, even though all the evidence shows the exact opposite. Every major massacre of people, you know, has been at the hands of socialists and communists. It's crazy.
One thing that's evident too in the Congress is there's no civility anymore.
Yeah, you're right.
I remember whenever you'd have a Republican and a Democrat arguing like they're going to get into a fist fight, and then go to lunch.
Yep.
Together. You know what I mean? Reagan and Tip O'Neill. You know, they were.
Yeah.
That's gone. That's gone. Well, we need to get it back.
Well, I think they find us. I think they find it easier. When I say they, I mean the deep state, and I mean I think it's the, you know, like I said, the deep state, the corporate state, the, you know, foreign adversaries. All of them find it much easier to control us when we are at each other's throats and when we distrust each other and hate each other as citizens.
Yeah.
And I think that I think you're right. I think there's something to that's why they continue to push that agenda that tries to make us hate each other. There was a time when you would see Republicans, Democrats find some things they could work together on, and you would see them, you know, come together for, you know, for different events and things like that. And it was not, you didn't have this hatred. But I would also argue that at that time, the Democrats were a lot more reasonable. They have gone so far to the left and so off the reservation against the Constitution in so many ways. And the Republicans, I would say, are probably, well, I think the party platform, I think, is at least aligns with the Constitution. A lot that are in office seem to not be aligning with the Constitution. And but it baffles me how we have gotten to this place. And I don't know how we turn it around. One thing that I do think is kind of interesting, if you ask yourself the question, if there were no parties, if there was no such thing as a Republican or a Democrat or anything like that, but that every single person running for office had to stand on their own 2 feet and had to give their position on the issues and win over the people who they were running, you know, to win their votes. I don't think we would see the level of vitriol that we see today. And I think George Washington warned about this. He warned about parties for that very reason. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, it would be nice if we could just wave a wand and make it all right, but
Right.
it's never going to happen. And what we need to do is come up with a plan, and the plan might be work on the education,
Yeah, that's definitely a good start.
work on mental health. I think we have a big problem with mental health in the country. Work on civility, and start to get more involved so that you really do have to understand who you're voting for. You know, make them tell you how they feel about things, and that not to be a member of a gang, because they're like gangs now.
Yeah.
And they're like a gang. And whenever they want to do something, the people that don't want to go along with them. And I think that's a horrible way to horrible way to run a Congress.
Yeah. What would you say to a young person who feels disillusioned by the state of the nation, but still wants to believe in America?
Well, I would say that you have to educate yourself. Doesn't mean you have to go to college. You have to read. You have to use the computer. You have to be interested because it affects you. It affects them, and when they get married, it's going to affect the family and the children. And you don't want to be a dunce.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of dunces.
I'll bet a lot of people don't even know. A lot of younger people probably don't even know what that is. I remember they had a. I remember they had a chair when I think I was in 4th grade. Chair in the corner of the room. If you were acting like a fool, that's where they made you sit.
Yeah,
And they even had a stupid hat for you to wear.
right. Yeah.
So, where can people find your book? I know it's online. Is it on Amazon?
It's on Amazon. It's on actually 40 platforms
Oh, that's
around the
great.
world. It's on Barnes and Noble and everybody.
And
And
do you have a website or social media where people can engage
we do.
with
We
your
do.
work?
In fact, I'm probably, I don't know about this, but I might be one of the few people that ever put their telephone number and their email on the book, on
Wow,
the back of the book. And I get people
that's pretty
calling
brave.
me. No, I get people calling me with real information
Oh,
that
that's good.
things that they encountered and were afraid to say anything, and so they feel like they can say it to me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell anybody, but yeah, I've enjoyed the response from YouTube. It's I thought I'd do a little bit of that just to get the book some life going in the book, but it's selling very well, very well. And I like I say, most of those books, some of them go 500 pages, and they got so much minutia in it.
Yeah.
I'm sort of short, direct, and to the point. And I think that a
That's
lot of
probably
people,
good for today's generation because I think we have a short attention span.
yeah, yeah. And anyway, uh, I don't think I'm planning on writing another book, but I'm 82. I was just 82 recently, and pretty good physical condition. A little bit of slipping in, like looking for one word, but I could talk on the subject for 3 hours without missing it.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm going to keep on going as long as people are reading the book and wanting more and more information, because I hope other people start doing the same thing. Yeah.
Well, Jim, I think what you're doing is important. I'm glad that you've put it into a book. I'm really glad that you got the same documents and more than what was in Regicide put in there. I'm really looking forward to looking at that. And I think that's important for people to see and understand, because if we don't understand what has happened in the past, we will never know what's going to happen in the future. And we've got to recognize it so that we can hopefully put a stop to it. And like I said, I don't think it's a one-time deal. I mean, look, the Church Commission put a stop to a lot of this, but then they found, creative ways of getting around the rules. And now we need to revisit this. I think it needs to be cleaned up. And
Sure.
so I'm grateful for you and for the work that you've done putting into this book. Tell us once again the name of the book.
It's Patriotism Unhinged, and my channel is Patriotism Unhinged channel, and we have about a little more than 50 different views on there.
Now, Patriot Unhinged channel, is that like a Telegram channel, or what? Or is that on a website?
YouTube.
YouTube. Okay, YouTube. All right. And Do you have a like a .com website too, or is it just mainly on YouTube?
Mainly on YouTube.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, folks, you've heard it here tonight. A lot of really interesting new information, and I really recommend that you go out and get the book. That's where you're going to find all of those documents, and these documents are fascinating. I've looked at some of them, at least the ones that were in Regicide, and it really exposes and lays bare what actually happened. And it looks now, I think before the declassification of a lot of these files, and they still haven't declassified everything. They still have a lot that is still redacted. But if you want to know what really happened, go get this book and read it and look at those documents, because these documents, I don't think are lying. So many of them have already been confirmed with the newly declassified information that has been put out there. I always like to ask my guests, kind of the final question, and that is that we've talked about a number of things tonight, Jim, but what do you want people to take away from our conversation more than anything?
Well, I think really it was a great conversation, and I think that people need to watch podcasts. They need to watch them because they'll be entitled to some new information that they don't know. And even I got some information tonight that I didn't know from you. And so I would say that there's a lot of podcasts. Go through them, find people that you like what they're saying, and you can learn from them. And there's so many people now that the computer and the I don't use a computer. I have a iPad, but you can get a wealth of information using it, and that's what the kids want to use now. And that's what I think we should be thinking about.
Yeah, and I would add to that in this day and age of AI, there's so much. It's so much easier to access information than it was in the past.
Oh, it is.
You do have to verify that data, because sometimes you get wrong information, but that's no different than really anywheres. But if we would just apply and utilize these tools, we can find out a lot of what's going on and find out a lot about history. I remember when we saw all of the rioting that was going on in America during the Summer of Love. There was the BLM riots and everything, and you saw cities that were on fire. I remember being very dismayed and feeling a sense of doom and feeling like, is this our country? Are we headed down a path of destruction? And by going back and studying history, I was renewed in my faith in our country, because there had been multiple incidences throughout the past in American history. We just don't know about them because they're not talked about. But there have been multiple instances of public distress or public unrest and disruption, and even mass murders. Crazy riots. The city of Chicago was like burned down right after the Civil War, when a lot of the blacks were leaving the South and going up there, and they were willing to work for less money than what some of the others were. And so it turned into race riots. You had, I think it was like 10,000 Chinese rail workers that were burned alive in Los Angeles, in Chinatown, when they burned it down. There was a lot of riots that were over the building of the railroad across this country that people don't know about. It's called the rail wars. And knowing about that, and even before we solidified ourselves as a country, immediately after the American Revolution, the very first public unrest was known as the Whiskey Rebellion. I would encourage people to go read about it. And George Washington, who was beloved by the American people, was able to put an end to it without violence. But it's a part of our history, and it has happened over and over again. And I would suspect that the government abusing its powers, if we did a historical look back, we'd find that there were multiple incidences of where that's happened and where we've had to correct, and where that's happened, where we've had to correct. And I would say that we probably have seen times in the past where the people were less patriotic, and then we course corrected and we became patriotic again. Now you think about like the Roaring '20s, and then you look at what happened after World War II. We had the greatest generation.
That's right.
And so I guess what I would say is that, folks, don't give up on America. We may have a lot of problems. There may be a lot of issues that we as we are discovering more and more about the corruption that has gone on in the last administration and in previous ones, as we still see corruption that exists and problems that exist within some of our agencies today. We can't give up on our nation. It is our homeland, and we need to pray for her, as well as engage and be actively involved. And with that, I always like to end my show with prayer, because I recognize what our founders understood, which is that we need the providence of God in order to be blessed as a nation and in order to overcome these challenges. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and bow and pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you so much, Lord, for the work that Jim has done in this book and is bringing to light. I pray that you would open the eyes and the hearts of the American people to recognize that they have a responsibility and a duty to their nation to stand up for truth and to engage and to try to bring peace, even amongst, try to have understanding for their fellow Americans, even those that maybe they disagree with. And I pray, God, that you would help us all to overcome the illusionary warfare that is being used against us by our enemies, both foreign and domestic. God, help our nation to be restored to greatness. Do pray that you would make America great again, that you would help us to be a shining light on a hill for others to see and admire and want to emulate, even in their own countries, the freedoms and the liberties that we have in this great nation. Lord, we thank you for all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Well, folks, I want to thank you again for joining the show. We had a good number of people tonight, about almost 1,400 people live watching the show. So thank you, and thank you for your presence on the show. And Jim, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
With that, folks, remember to stay vigilant, always seek the truth, and don't give up on this nation. And with that, God bless and good night.
Good night.
Raise some Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, the time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.